like, that was a community that I was in. So everyone knew what was going on with me. And I didn't really know that until I got sober. I was like, oh God. And then it was like having to deal with the shame and the embarrassment and all those things. But ultimately I had such a beautiful place to land when I went back to school. And then it was like, all these people started coming out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden I had all this support that was seemingly there all along, but I wasn't even aware of it because I wasn't paying attention to it and I wasn't tapped into it.
Hello, Heal Squad. Welcome back. Glad to be with you today. We have a great episode about breathwork coming your way. But first, our quote of the day: rest is a practice, and a practice requires consistency, dedication, and a willingness to show up even when I'm too busy. That is from Ashley Neese, our guest today. Super excited for her. She's not only a seasoned breathwork teacher, but also a dedicated somatic practitioner. She has a keen focus on trauma-informed practices as she guides individuals through the transformative work of breath work, helping them connect with their bodies and foster a sense of balance and healing. Ashley has done a tremendous amount of work in her own healing journey that has led her to this work. I'm so excited for her to share with you guys what breathwork is and how it can be beneficial in your life. Without further ado, here's my chat with Ashley. Guests come in at exactly the moment that I need them. So I always hope that the audience is feeling the same way. But breathwork has been something that's been coming back into my awareness of something that I need to do. I'm really trying to focus on actually breathing throughout my day, which I think we all know we don't do very much of. But I think it's meant to be today. So I'm excited for our chat.
Me too.
So will you share with everyone listening a little bit about what brought you to breathwork and your work in general?
Yeah, so I came into breathwork many years ago through getting sober, and I got sober young. And, my first sponsor in 12-step groups was having me meditate. That was one of the practices that she introduced me to. And it was so difficult for me at that time in my life. Not that, sometimes meditation is still difficult for me, I'll be honest. But at that time, I had no practice of being with myself. Right. And I quite frankly didn't want to, which was why I was drinking and using drugs and kind of just always in this state of running away. And, the very simple practice she gave me was to sit and count my breath. She was like, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on your inhale and count 5 back down to 1 on your exhale. And at the time, I didn't even really know like what that practice meant, but she was like, just do it and just try it for a couple of minutes every day. And, I would say probably the first 2 months of that work, it was so painful to just sit there and be with myself and be with not only the physical pain I was in, emotional, mental, all of the things, really sitting still and kind of facing my life, for lack of a better way to say it, for the first time. But what happened over those first couple of months, just counting 1 to 5 on the inhale, 5 back down to 1 on the exhale, is that I started to have a little bit of space in my mind. So before, my thoughts were just going on hyper speed all the time, and I could never kind of find my way. And with that practice, I would notice I'm thinking, like I'm having a thought. Like I was never able to do that before. And then all of a sudden, things started shifting for me in so many different ways. And that was really kind of my introduction to breath work. And she didn't even call it breath work at the time. I kind of looked at that retroactively and go, I've actually been doing breath work for longer than I realized, because my first sponsor taught me this really simple breathing practice. And that was really the thing that kind of led me into meditation, that led me into breath work later on in my life, and that led me onto this path of healing. And it was just something so simple. It's just sitting there and counting my breaths. And I often come back to practices in my life right now that are that simple. I'm a mom of 3 now. My life is really busy in so many different ways with, child rearing and living on a homestead and all the different things that I do in a day. But I often will find myself coming back to this really simple practice of just following my inhale and following my exhale. And what it offers me is a moment to drop into presence. It offers me a moment to kind of reorient. So let's say I'm super stressed in a moment, or overwhelmed, or getting angry or frustrated that something's happening with one of my kids. I can just stop and put a hand on my heart and inhale and exhale and go, okay, I have the tools I need. I can handle this moment. And if I can't handle this moment, I can get myself some support. I can take a break. I can ask my partner for help. There's all these things that are available to me that aren't available when I'm not in the present moment, when I'm in that state of fight or flight. So that's really how I got started and kind of where it's taken me.
Wow. I wonder, at the time when you were trying to get sober, sorry, there's a bug around me, was that even hard for you? Because I feel like when you're in a tough place in life, whether it's something like you were dealing with, or say you have a family member that's sick or you're sick, even just something small that you have to do feels like such a large task. Did it feel like a large task then?
I love that question. And yes, it was at that point in my life, it was one of the largest tasks. I was young. I was 21 at the time when I quit drinking, and I had been in college but wasn't, participating anymore, and was just, I used to say that I was lost. I don't know if I was lost. I don't know if that's a way that I would articulate it now, but I was in pain. I was in a lot of pain. I was suffering, and I was trying to make it stop, which is why I drank and used. I was trying to make the pain stop. I was trying to just disappear. And sitting there and counting my breaths was, at that time, the hardest thing I'd ever done. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, because even before I picked up drinking and alcohol, I was checking out, I was disassociating, I was doing all these behaviors, but I didn't have, the medicine. And once I found drugs and alcohol, then I had the medicine I needed to make myself feel better and to make myself essentially not really feel anything at all. But sitting there and having to feel for the first time, and this is also 20 plus years ago. This is before everything was as trauma informed as it is now. This is before, the world of somatics was what it is now, where we have all these tools and all these teachers and practitioners that are like, hey, to do a trauma informed practice, you start really small. It's not about biting off more than you can chew. It's not about doing the full thing and like breathing for an hour or 2 hours. But I didn't know this at the time because this wasn't the language, but what my sponsor offered me was a very trauma-informed practice. It was like, hey, just do a little bit, because already that little bit was so much for me. That's all I could handle.
Yeah, I can understand in a different way. And I think a lot of people who are in kind of those troubled times find any of this stuff like a huge step, and it's so hard to do. And so I am grateful that you were able to share that. Taking me back to those first times you're doing the breath work, what helped you in those moments where it did feel arduous?
One of the things that helped me the most was that my sponsor said I could use a timer. And so just knowing that there was going to be a limit to my practice was really, really helpful. And this is before, I'm really dating myself now, but I didn't have a cell phone at the time. There was no like iPhone to speak of. So I used one of those old kitchen timers. I think it was like an egg or something that I had that I would click on, like, and it was like going in the background, which was kind of annoying, but also like, okay, I know it's there. I know at some point it's going to go bzzz and then it's going to stop. But I had my little egg timer in the little place that I was living, and I turned it on. And that was the one thing I needed, because for me, what was so important was to have some kind of boundary, because it was so scary. It was so painful. It was so difficult to go internal, right? And to be with myself, to be with the thoughts that were present, to be with the sensations that were present, to be with the emotions that were present. And so just knowing that there was some kind of end in sight, even if all I did was go, okay, I'm just ready for this to be over, breathe. Okay, I'm ready for this to be over. It's like maybe that was my practice for the day. That's okay. That's beautiful. That's something, right? That's showing up. But that was really the most helpful thing, just knowing that at some point that timer was going to go off and then I could be done.
Yeah. And then where did you take it from there?
From there, I've been on this like winding journey. From there, it went to me leaving Atlanta, which is my hometown. I grew up there, finished college there, and then I moved to San Francisco to go to graduate school. And then I set foot in my first yoga class, which was very San Francisco. I went into a hot yoga studio. And, my mom would always talk about doing yoga in the 70s and how great it was for before she got pregnant, all this kind of stuff. But that was really all I knew about yoga and meditation. That it was something my mom did in this house, in Atlanta with this older woman and a few other people in this small little class. I think she was taking hatha yoga in the 70s. But it wasn't something that she practiced when I was growing up. And I'd only ever heard about it like it was some story. And so I set my foot in my first yoga class, and it was at the end of that class. It was a really intense, heated yoga, like moving and stretching, all these things. And at the end, we got to child's pose, and I was crying. I just could not help it. It was just the tears were just coming so intensely. And I was like, I don't know what's happening to me right now. This is so intense, but it also feels really good. Like I feel like some energy is moving, some things are clearing. And I was just like, okay, whatever this is, whatever this feeling that I'm having is right now, I want more of this. Like I need to figure out how to do this more. And all I knew at the time was, well, I better just come back to class tomorrow because this is where this is happening. And so I came back to class, and then I got really involved in the Hatha yoga community in San Francisco. And from there, that was really my entryway into breathwork, into deeper forms of meditation. And, at the beginning of every yoga class and at the end of every class, we'd meditate, we would sit. And I was fascinated by how different I would feel at the beginning of the class, the meditation, versus the end. By the end of the class, we'd get out of Shavasana or child's pose and sit and meditate. And I was like, this is so easy now. I cannot think for 2 seconds. I can feel my body in this new way. And it was so incredible. And so I was really after that feeling of, how can I move my body in a way so that I can get this feeling of just contentment? And I know a lot of people listening, maybe you don't practice yoga, perhaps you do other forms of exercise. I have a lot of friends who run, who walk, who hike, who do all kinds of things. And there's a way to get to that space where our minds are just a little bit more clear. And so that's really the thing that I was so excited about. And then it took me so much deeper into all those other modalities.
Yeah, so take me through the different modalities. Because you're technically a trauma-informed breathwork teacher, right?
Yeah.
Can you share exactly what that is?
Yeah, so for me, the trauma-informed piece comes in a couple of different ways. As I mentioned in the beginning, trauma-informed for me looks like doing one small piece at a time. So often, especially in our culture, it's like, let's bite off the biggest bite we can and go to town on this thing. And let's work on this, our biggest trauma right now for the next, 2 hours. And it's like, okay, let's just start really small. And so often in the work, it's about starting with feeling resourced first. Our brains are wired to look for what's wrong. And we're always like, okay, I'm in pain. I need to fix this. What can I do to fix all these things? What can I do to get out of this feeling that I'm in? And so the trauma-informed approach is not ignoring that. It's not bypassing that. It's honoring, all of those facets of us. And then it's simultaneously looking for, okay, what feels strong in your body right now? What feels good in your body right now? If you can't find anything that feels strong or good, what feels resourced in your body right now? So we're always looking for a resource. And so I bring that into my breathwork practice by having folks get really anchored and grounded before. So we'll do a practice called orienting. And orienting is a beautiful trauma-informed practice that comes directly out of somatic experiencing, which is Peter Levine's work. And the practice is so simple. It's looking around your space and seeing what you notice, right? So you can be orienting. I'll orient right now. I'm looking out the window. I live in the foothills in the center of California. I see the foothills. I see the blue sky. I see the leaves on the trees turning brown. And then I kind of turn my attention towards my office. I see all my books. I see my table. I see my water bottle. So it's looking. And then it's also noticing, what do we hear? So you can hear the sound of my voice. What else can you hear in this moment as you're listening? What can I feel right now? So what's tactile? What can I touch with my hands, my sweater, my pants, the chair that I'm sitting on? Right? So it's just really getting so present. And I love a practice like that because it's so accessible. It's so easy. We can do it literally anywhere. We can orient anywhere. And what it does is it starts to drop our nervous system into more of a parasympathetic state. And so when our nervous system is more in a parasympathetic state, then we've got choice online. All of a sudden we're like, okay, I have choices now. Now I can move into my breathwork practice. Now I can take a moment to slow myself down and do the thing that I'm here to do and then transition out of it. So that's a big piece for me. And, I came into trauma-informed work through healing my own trauma. And I will say that I'm still in the process of healing trauma. I haven't arrived anywhere. I haven't graduated. I haven't finished that work. It's going to be probably lifelong work for me. But I came in through a therapist that I was working with in Los Angeles because at the time I was in partnership and we were in a couples therapy and something came out in couples therapy. Essentially, I had never told my partner about some trauma that I'd had, some abuse. And it came out in therapy and my therapist kind of looked at me and she was like, whoa. Okay, like your partner didn't know this and you guys have been together for 2 years. And at the time I was like, no, I didn't really think it was necessary to tell him. And she just kind of paused the session and was like, all right, I'm going to give you a referral for a somatic therapist, someone I really think you should see. The woman at the time was a teacher for sensory motor therapy, which is a form of somatic therapy. And so I started seeing her. And that was, again, another moment. It's like I had that moment with my sponsor doing those first few rounds of breath work. I had that moment in Shavasana where I was like, okay, this is the next step. And then for me, the next step after that was actually dealing with a lot of my trauma and renegotiating a lot of my trauma.
It makes sense because that's why talk therapy is great for certain things, I think. But I do believe for some of these bigger traumas, there is more that needs to be done because you have to get into the fascia, you have to get into, every part of your body it's stored in, which then, can manifest into illness and so many things. So
that's right.
I think that's really powerful work. Are there different types of breath work?
Yes, there are many different types of breath work, and breath work there
has to be since you do trauma informed, so that's got to be one, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's like Wim Hof style breathing, there's holotropic breathing, there's there's all different kinds, just like modalities, just like there are with yoga or meditation or with anything else. And a lot of different practitioners have created methodologies and branding around different types of breath work. So that's what's so incredible about it, that there's so many different kinds.
What do you feel helped you get sober? Was it a combination of things?
Yeah, there was, and I've reflected on this quite a bit. And what I keep coming back to is there was this moment, and I'm a strong believer in, intuitive wisdom or internal knowing, those types of things that we as humans have this capacity to just know things, even though we might not be able to explain how we know it,
Yep.
we just know, or we just feel something, right? And we're like, I just have a gut feeling. So I just need to go to this coffee shop, or I just need to call this person, or whatever it is, we don't necessarily can articulate why. It's just a feeling, a sensation that we have. And so I've had that my whole life. And when I was very, very fortunate that my parents kind of got together and they did an intervention with my grandmother and some different people, and essentially brought me, my boyfriend at the time, brought me over to my grandmother's apartment where she was living and kind of sat me down. And then it was like, just like you would see on a TV show, it's like everyone's sitting around this table and they're like, okay, we think you have a problem and here's why. And now we're all going to go around and say why we think you have a problem and we want to help you. And I remember that moment it's just clear as day, sitting in my grandmother's apartment and her teal couches and everyone saying what they thought. And there was a alcohol and drug counselor in the room too, who had apparently been coaching my parents for a while on this, because I hadn't really been in communication with them for a while. But they obviously knew something was going on with me. And they said, hey, we want to help you. We want to send you to rehab. Will you go? And I had this moment it was almost like, everything they said, I was just I was so shut down at that point, and I was so sick, and I was in so much trouble, really. I was in so much trouble with the kinds of people that I was spending my time with and the things I was getting into. And I had this moment of it was almost like the room fell silent, and I could, for the first time, and since I was probably a kid, just feel that inner voice. I could hear that inner voice. I could feel that sensation in my body that was like, you have to say yes. You just have to say yes. And so I said yes. And then, my dad put me in the car and let me smoke cigarettes the whole way, even though he hated when I smoked in the car, and dropped me off at rehab. And I remember walking in, I remember the whole scene there so vividly. And I remember even my first day in the treatment center, in the group counseling. You know, I'd walked in the same clothes I'd been wearing for like a week, like hadn't bathed. I mean, it was just like not in a good way. And they're going around the room, and then the drug counselor's like, okay, why are you here? You know, and I remember sitting in this room full of like, 8 other people who are about my age. And I was like, well, I do a little Coke sometimes, and sometimes I drink. And like everyone else in the group they all started laughing. Like they were just literally laughing, and they were like, you're like 30 pounds underweight. Like you definitely do more than a little Coke. And I was like, what is this place? Why is everyone laughing at me? And,
oh my God.
And it was also, but then there was like this other voice online that was like, this is where you're supposed to be. Like you're lying. Like you're still lying. You know what I mean? Like you're still not seeing the picture. So I was that was really the beginning of my journey. And for whatever reason, like I said, in that moment, I just heard that. I heard a voice, and I felt that like knowing, if I have to say yes to this, I just have to.
Wow. And so obviously the rehab helped, the breath work helped. How long was that process, you think, till you felt sturdy?
It probably took me, I would say it took me a good year and a half. I started to feel really sturdy. I was in treatment for a while. I don't remember how many months. I'd have to look. I mean, I think it was at least 6 months I lived there. And then I went into like a outpatient like situation for a while. And then I continued to stay doing outpatient stuff, at that facility, even though I was living in an apartment for a long time. I was connected to that treatment center, which was really important for me. And I was also very connected to 12-step groups, that they would bring inside the treatment center, and then I would do out, when I graduated. But I also went back to school when I think I was around 6 months clean and sober. I went back to college to finish college. And that's where I started to feel really sturdy, because it was one of those like just beautiful situations where I got a call when I was at the treatment facility. This is back when they had payphones. Again, no one had a cell phone.
I'm dying.
It's just like, they're like, Ashley, someone's yelling down the hall in the rehab. They're like, you have a phone call. And I'm like, oh, I have a phone call. Like no one ever calls me here. This is great. And so I went down and picked up the phone, and it was one of my teachers, one of my professors from college. And he was like, hey, I called your parents because I was worried about you. And I heard you were in here and getting sober. And he's like, just so you know, I'm 21 years sober.
Oh.
And I'm like gonna tear up thinking about that now, because it was like those sorts of things just started to happen like on a regular basis for me once I decided to get sober. It was like people just came out of the woodwork. Like I had no idea that my teacher had been in AA for like 20 something years. And when I got clean and got out of there, he would meet me at meetings and introduce me to all these people. And it also made me feel safe enough to go back to school, because I was like, how am I going to go back to school? How am I going to go live in this place where it was like I was at the worst of my worst, and how am I going to face all my classmates? And it was just, I went to a really small little art school. I mean, there was like 10 people in my class. So it was like a really small college. It wasn't like a big university where you're kind of, no one knows who you are. It's like everyone knew everybody there. There were only like 100 people in my graduating class.
And they knew that, Ashley.
Yeah, and they knew that, Ashley. Exactly. They knew the one who was like the lively one at the party, who was like always going out with strangers and who would disappear for days on end, and always had some weird person like in her dorm room. So it was like, that was me. I remember my roommate at the time was always like, I remember one time she was this really, really wonderful woman, and her parents would call sometimes. And her parents, I remember, called our dorm room one night, and she wasn't there, and I answered, and they were like, oh, is Kim there? I'm like, she's not here. And then her mom was like, I just want to check in with you. Are you okay? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, Kim's been telling me this, and this. I just want to see if you're okay. And it's like, that was a community that I was in. So everyone knew what was going on with me. And I didn't really know that until I got sober. I was like, oh God. And then it was like having to deal with the shame and the embarrassment and all those things. But ultimately I had such a beautiful place to land when I went back to school. And then it was like, all these people started coming out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden I had all this support that was seemingly there all along, but I wasn't even aware of it because I wasn't paying attention to it and I wasn't tapped into it.
It just kind of reminded me of the moment in The Wizard of Oz when she realizes she had the power all along. Like you had them all along. Everybody was there. You just didn't see them for whatever reason. It feels like the program helps you admit become aware, all of that. But the breath work really helped you drop into your body and feel safe in your body and become connected to your body. So will you explain how somatic therapy kind of works in terms of breath work?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. So for me, the way that I see it, I mean, breathwork is can be its own practice, right? Kind of outside of somatic therapy. And often a lot of somatic therapy incorporates breath, right? So they can be two separate things. And the beautiful thing about somatic work and somatic therapy is that often it's looking to the breath as less of, let's just do this practice, and more, where's your body just naturally gravitating in its breath? Like, where are you just naturally breathing? Okay, you're feeling anxious right now. Notice what's happening with your breath. So it's less about applying a specific breathing technique or practice and more about just noticing the way that your body breathes in different states, right? So in different nervous system states, in different mental states, in different emotional states. And so breath work is really these kind of, they're not necessarily isolated practices, but they're just practices that you can do, and you can weave them into a somatic therapy session, or you can practice them on your own, right? So as a separate practice, or in conjunction with a walking practice, or in conjunction with a seated meditation practice, or a standing meditation practice, anything like that. So when I kind of got into the world of somatics, I'd already been practicing and teaching breath work for quite a while. And what I was so interested in with the somatic work, and again, going back to that trauma-informed approach, is that there's not actually a one-size-fits-all for breath work. And there isn't one practice that's the panacea and gonna cure all the things, even though there's a lot of marketing out there that leads us to believe that if I just do this one practice, then finally I will feel better forever, or I will be regulated forever, or whatever it is. And, that kind of black and white thinking is, it's part of marketing, but it's also really looking at, what do I need in a moment? Right. So for me, I'll just use myself as an example because it's so easy. When I started doing the somatic work, instead of just going, okay, I need to do this practice because I'm trying to get some result, or because I need to ground myself and I'm so ungrounded all the time. And that was always the loop in my mind, I'm so dysregulated. And with the somatic piece, what it really brought in was this element of gentleness. It was actually, maybe I'm dysregulated right now for a really good reason. Right? Why might that be happening? Right?
Yes.
It's let's go a little deeper. Let's look at that.
It doesn't always have to be bad.
What's going on right now?
It doesn't always have to be bad. There could be a really good reason. That's a great point.
Yeah. And so that's where I got so excited about somatics, because it helped me understand on a deeper level, just the nuance and the importance of our body's own adaptive strategies and our survival strategies. They are there for good reason. And so instead of just trying to regulate myself out of them, how can I honor them? How can I honor myself? How can I honor what my body has been through and what it continues to go through? How can I honor the places in my system that are stuck or frozen or scared, right? How can I honor the places in myself that get dysregulated? It's actually okay. That's a sign. That's a window. That's a portal. It's showing me something. And if I can view it in that way, then I can get that deeper peace and I can do that deeper healing work instead of always feeling like I'm a project that needs to be fixed. And, I'm coming to this point in my life where I am so just ready to really shed that and kind of shift that orientation that I'm a project that always needs to be fixed, and really look at myself as a human who's just doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. And it's not to shirk responsibility, and it's not to avoid things. It's actually to encompass more of myself and to hold more space for myself and to hold myself in more complexity versus always trying to fix and push my way out of things.
Oh, I love what you just said, because I'm such a fixer, and I think I could use a little bit of that. And it really ends up being just empathy for yourself and loving yourself, because you're loving yourself as you are. Like you said, we're complex. And sometimes there are things that we can't even, sometimes I'll have anxiety out of nowhere attached to nothing. And I'm like, where is this coming from? But how do I know that they aren't putting up more 5G towers in my area in that moment and electrocuting me more? And now I'm feeling it, because we're feeling beings. How do I know that maybe there's something in my hormones going a little wacky right now that I don't really have any control over? So I feel like we need to think about it like that. Like there's probably a reason and it's okay.
Yes. Yes. And I love what you're saying. Yeah, because there's something else that's really, for me, what I've seen, especially in the last couple of years, with the fixing, there's this, it's never done, right? And sure, we can say our work is never done, quote unquote. Of course, like I said before, I'm going to be healing for the rest of my life. Okay, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. It's a continuum. But the energy of fixing is really different. It's like I'm always a project. It's never going to be right. It's never going to be right. Instead of going, where can I lean into trust? And what you just said, Maria, I think is so important because it really brings us to trust. It's like, yeah, maybe I don't know why I'm having anxiety right now, and that's okay. But can I just trust that my body's showing me this for a reason? Even if I don't know what it is, can I just trust it? And this goes back to the intuition piece. My partner and I talk about this a lot. Sometimes we'll be running late with the kids. This happened not that long ago. We were running late. We were going into the Bay Area. And I was so frustrated. I was like, just get the kids in the car. Like, why aren't they like doing what they're supposed to be doing? Just getting so angry. And then we're late. And then I calm myself down and we're fine. And then and this is what's so nuts, we had just missed this horrible accident on the freeway by literally like 3 minutes, and it's just those kinds of things where now I just trust. I'm like, you know what? We're going to be late. Okay. There's a reason. I don't know what it is, and I don't need to worry about it. I can just trust it.
So, Ashley, stand by for 1 second because I have to just share something from some of our supporters of this show. So, Macy's, as you guys know, is a big supporter of this show. I am a huge fan. I've worked with them forever and ever as a fragrance spritzer in my teens and all the way up till now. I just wanted to share with you guys that they have a free personal stylist program that I really think you guys should take advantage of. Having worked with personal stylists, they have really helped me get out of my comfort zone. They've helped me see things that I never would have tried. And I've learned so much from them because they're the experts. And so in our business, they're very pricey for their work, but at Macy's they are offered to you for free. So if you're looking for something for a wedding or a big event in your life, or you have a new job and you want to kind of spruce up your work wardrobe or your Zoom wardrobe, go to Macy's.com/personal stylist. It's totally free. Take advantage. And also my other favorite supporter for the show, Just Thrive. If you don't know by now how much I love Just Thrive, you can take a look at some of my, I don't think I've posted any recent photos of my flat stomach, but it's back. My flat stomach is back, and that is thanks to Just Thrive. Their probiotics are amazing. They're one of the few that makes it all the way down to your intestines, which is super, super huge in this field. And I'm also not just a fan of their probiotic. I love their Just Calm that helps calm the vagus nerve. So I've been using both of those. If you use the promo code Heal Squad, you will get 20% off your first 90-day bottle of Just Calm and Just Thrive probiotic. So if you're ready to take control of constipation, bloat, stress, and live your healthiest life, use the Heal Squad code at the checkout. JustThriveHealth.com. I cannot say enough. And in fact, I think Just Thrive dominates a lot of my personal conversations at parties at this point because I'm always telling people how much it helps me because I'm always running into people who have health questions and are dealing with bloating and all those things. That's not normal, guys. And masking the problem with, the things that are available to us at the local pharmacy isn't usually the best answer. I mean, for a single situation, perhaps, but if this is an ongoing issue, you definitely need to talk to a naturopath and you should get on a probiotic like Just Thrive. I love it. Now, back to you, Ash.
Yeah, I remember in therapy, this was several years ago. I think it was right at the time I was pregnant, and our therapist, I remember him saying to my partner, you could probably withstand World War III and be fine. It's like, yep. Yeah. So,
we're lucky to have them. Trust me. I'm so grateful because I can go to him with everything and he's like, no problem. It's easy. I got this, whatever. And I'm like, okay. but it's a lot. So if someone is hearing breathwork for the first time and you had to explain the why should you take on breath work in your busy life? What are the benefits that you're going to see? What would you say?
I love this question. And it's such a great question because as I've evolved and grown in my practice, I feel like my answers have changed. An answer that I would have given 10 years ago, I feel like is very different than what I would give now. And I'm happy to share some of those to you. But, initially for me, why I started practicing breath work and some of the benefits that I found in myself and also to the, this points to the research too. There's a lot of beautiful research on breathing now, and there's a lot of kind of science backing this up. But, initially why I was practicing was to focus, to learn how to not only like regulate myself, but just work with my nervous system states, right? Shift my state. That was really something that I was really excited about. I can do a breathing practice to shift my mental state, to shift my physical state. Okay, cool. Sign me up. This is really interesting. So those were kind of two of the main reasons that I was practicing. And then as I evolved in my practice, I was practicing for more clarity. I was practicing for more consciousness, to be more present in my life. Because for me, presence always means that there's more creativity, there's more choice. I have more options in the present moment. There's more aliveness. Now I'm really into that, phrase, aliveness. What does it mean to feel alive? How can we feel alive? So breathwork is a beautiful practice for that. These days, my practice is really about kind of going back, but just really about anchoring in the present moment and being able to have a practice that I can call on to shift my perspective just in a split second, to offer me a moment of reprieve, offer me a moment of respite, offer me a moment to connect to myself. Especially in this phase of my life, now I have so much energy going out to my kids. I mean, it's just like constantly going out, which is where it should be. They're young, they're all under 5, like they need a lot of energy, they need a lot of love. And so just even a hand on my heart, as I mentioned before, and doing some really simple breathing can just start to pull some of that energy back to myself. And it's a really beautiful and simple way to take care of myself. As we do this work, we become more and more sensitive. That's a beautiful kind of byproduct of this work, and it also makes life challenging sometimes. To go, I just feel way more than I felt before. Okay, how do I take care of myself around that? But the nervous system flexibility really looks like being able to go up into my sympathetic state when I need to, and then being able to drop down when I need to. So for so much of like my late 20s, early 30s, I was just going up and then never really coming down. I would come down a little bit, but never fully dropping down. And for some folks too who are listening, you might be in the reverse position. That happens too. We're in that chronic state of just depletion and depression. And like, how do we even muster the energy to get out of bed and brush our teeth and kind of do the things that we need to do in a day? And so when I think about breathwork now, it's really about, the biggest practice for me is just getting that flexibility within my nervous system so that when I do hit that kind of top, level of stress, I'm like, okay, I'm at my window. Okay, now I have a practice that I can do to drop myself down. And even if I can't get to it in that exact moment, I've got it in my back pocket. So at the end of the day, when the kids are asleep and kind of the house is in order, I can do what I need to do to really orient my nervous system in a different direction. And, I mentioned this a couple times, but the last big benefit for me is just having those choices. I like to have choice. And when I'm stuck in fight or flight, or when I'm stuck in that kind of more depressed kind of bottom dorsal vagal nervous system state, I don't have a lot of choice.
Yeah.
And there's so much like beauty and kind of agency and creativity that comes from being able to make choices in the present moment versus making choices from a different nervous system state or from a different aspect of my history.
Yeah. When you talked about you had 3 kids, how old are they?
So I have a 5-year-old, I have a 2-year-old, and we have a 4-month-old right now.
Holy moly. My baby's almost 6 months old right now.
Oh my goodness.
So
Congrats.
I actually know what that is like. So as a mom to 3 young children, how do you find the time to do breath work? Because I have 1 and I have help, and it's still, it's hard to find time to meditate. I'm trying to do it while I'm red lighting, and while I'm red lighting, it's kind of not the same as really going into a black space because you can't help but see the red light. So tell me what you're doing so that we can learn from you.
I am finding time in whatever ways that I can. And it was funny. So last night, my partner is sick right now, and our 2-year-old is sick. And so at 12:30 in the morning this morning, the 4-month-old, she woke up for her bottle. And so my partner, he's been getting up with her a lot, like mostly getting up with her. Since I've
you
been
got a
having
good
to work.
one too.
A really good one. And so he's been doing her, first bottle. And so he's like, hey babe, I can't do it. Can you please get up? So I get up, feed her, and then get her back down. And then our 2-year-old is still sleeping in our bedroom. He's in a little bed next to me, but he's still in the bedroom. And so starting at about 12:30, he was up 4 times last night. So all of this to say that my sleep is still very, very disorganized, for lack of a better word.
Compromised.
And so I get my breathing practice in whenever I can. I found myself with our 2-year-old, every time he got up and I would get him back down, I would do probably 5-10 minutes of breath work to help myself get reorganized, help my nervous system drop down, help ease me back into sleep. So that's often a time when I practice, is those kind of very early morning hours when I'm up with the kids. Another time that I practice often is when I work. So I'm writing a lot these days, and I'll do a breathing practice in between writing sessions, or I'll take a break and I'll walk around the block. As I mentioned before, we live in a very small town and it's like in the foothills. So I'll take a nice little walk around our little downtown area, breathing as I'm walking. And the other thing I do is I involve our kids. So both our 5-year-old son Solomon and our 2-year-old son Zen, like, they know about breathing. They know about breath work, especially Solomon. He will find himself in a moment now where he's getting frustrated and will say, Solly, and he'll go, I know, I need to breathe. And then he'll sit down and he'll start doing his deep breathing and he'll start extending his exhales. And for me, that's just been such a beautiful gift and such a joy to watch him practice, and to watch him practice just on his own volition. Just go, I need to breathe. I'm going to go in my room.
Wow.
Don't come in here and bother me. I'm going to go do my breathing practice. And it's really cool because it works, and it's so powerful. And he's getting this modeled through my partner, Nick, and I, and he's also, doing it on his own. And then we've been teaching Zen, our 2-year-old, breathing too. When he's really like having a hard time, we'll be like, okay, Zen, we're going to do our breathing, and we'll look outside where we live in the foothills. Our house is just surrounded by all these beautiful trees. And so we'll say, hey, Zen, let's look out the window. We're going to look at the trees and we're going to do some deep breathing. And we'll just go in through the nose and then out, just like that. And so for me, often my breathwork practice comes in teaching my kids too.
Wow. I love that. Okay. So can you teach us? I think we end on learning one good breathing technique that we can do in the car. Because I do some in the car. People will say breathe in, like you said, for 5, hold for 3, let out for 5. Does it matter how many seconds you do things for? Can you create your own rhythm?
Yes, I think there's some science behind some of those rhythms. So like the box breathing, which is inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. So that comes straight out of like the Navy SEAL training. There's a lot of, research benefits to some of these specific number counts. But I always say too, it's up to us to really check in with our own bodies. And so if we can't do a 4 count box breathing, try a 3 count box breathing and see if that works, and kind of work your way up to 4 counts. That's perfectly fine. One of the practices that I love that is just, it's a tried and true practice for me, it works really well, is just to inhale for as long as I can through my nose. Just hold for 1 or 2 counts. And then exhale out of my mouth for as long as I can.
That feels so good.
It's really, really simple. Then you can just do that. Let's do that again together. So let's inhale through the nose. Hold. And then exhale out of your mouth.
I'm going to take a nap. That feels so good. When I breathe in, I actually visualize my lungs expanding. That helps me take in a deeper breath.
Yes, I love that. I love that visual aid. That's so beautiful.
Because otherwise it's going to be shallow.
Yeah, for sure. I will often to have clients or students take their hands and place them just on their rib cage with their elbows out to the side so that they can feel that. Like, let's actually feel on the inhale, your lungs expanding, your rib cage expands, so they can get that biofeedback really quickly.
Wow.
And have that kind of somatic orientation. So that's a really good one to do too. You can also have a hand on your belly. On your inhale, feel your abdomen kind of flow into your hands. On your exhale, allow it to soften. So I love that you mentioned that visual aid, and I just offer those 2 kind of touch practices as well. And I think, I always say this too. It's like the best breathwork practice is the one that you're going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the practice that you're going to do consistently. It's the one that you're going to like turn to. And the way that we develop our capacity to be able to orient to a practice like breathwork in a moment when we really need it is through practice.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I was fortunate that I was able to start all these practices before I had kids and really build up my kind of toolkit and my practice kit of what works for me and know my nervous system well enough, but I'm still learning. And I definitely have had times as a new parent where I've, seasons where I've practiced more and seasons where I've practiced less. But what I'm finding more and more is that those little micro moments of practice actually serve me a lot better than trying like once or twice a week to get in a super long practice. Like if I'm just consistently practicing throughout the day, that is what I've found in this season of my life helps me the most.
Wow. I feel so much better just after a few little breaths. So friends, if you are feeling that way and you want to know more or find out more, where would you send them, Ashley? Do you have a website or something people can go to get more breathing practices?
Yeah, so you can come to my website. It's ashleyneese.com. You can also check out my first book, How to Breathe. It's got 25 practices in it that are really, really beautiful. They're gentle. They're fun. There's a lot of cool stuff in there and lots of easy techniques for practicing.
Yeah. And by the way, it's not even just for your mental, it's for your physical too. We need to oxygenate our systems. And if you think about it, we're so rarely breathing deeply. That's why I love hiking, because it forces you, activity, movement, it forces you to breathe. And that's why you feel so good when you do these things. But throughout the day, when you're sitting at your computer, you're feeling like slumberly and shitty because you're not breathing. So
it's so true. It makes such a big difference. So yeah, any little break that you can take throughout your day when you're in front of your computer to do some breathing will really help.
Well, we'll put a link to your website in the summary of this episode. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing your story and for sharing these really great techniques.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to be in conversation with you, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, friends. Well, I hope this has inspired you to perhaps look into breath work. I know that I am going to make a bigger effort to incorporate it into my life. I was doing it in the car for a while, and I would put my hand on my kind of abdomen so I could feel my breath stretch my stomach out. So when you breathe in, you should blow up your stomach like a ball, and then exhale, it should suck back in. So just working on that diaphragm breathing. But I'm definitely going to focus on using breath work in my stressful moments. I think that was something that I really took away here that I think is helpful. But definitely look into ashleyneese.com and her new book, Permission to Rest, Revolutionary Practices for Healing, Empowerment, and Collective Care. And in the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or mariamenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.